I think the problem with saying that faith is just a crutch or a virus is that both of them start with the assumption that God doesn't exist. Now, of course, if there is no God, then both of them can provide an explanation for why people still believe. You could say, well, you only believe because you want it to be true, or you only believe because that's what your parents believed, and so forth. But of course, if God does exist, both arguments could be turned in on themselves and turned the other way around. So you could say, well, the only reason you don't believe in God is that you don't want God to exist. And the only reason you don't believe in God is because you generally live in a culture where other people hold that worldview, or maybe your parents held that worldview. Now, some atheists would say, well, hang on a minute, that wouldn't happen. But actually, it does happen. Thomas Nagel, professor of philosophy at New York University, said, it's not just that I don't believe in God and naturally hope that he doesn't exist. I don't want God to exist. I don't want the universe to be that way. It was Fyodor Dostoevsky who said, if God doesn't exist, then anything is permissible. And so there could be an attraction, couldn't there, to saying there is no God in the heavens. There is no judge ultimately one day. I can do whatever I like. So yeah, faith could be a crutch for the weak, but equally, atheism could be an escape from this idea of judgment or accountability. So the argument doesn't dismiss God, it just explains why people might still believe in God if God doesn't exist, but equally it could explain why people don't believe in God if God does exist. The same with the idea of the faith being a virus. You could say, well, you're just a Christian because you live in a Christian culture. Well, actually that doesn't work so much, particularly in Western society today, because the predominant mentality of Western society is one that says we're post-Christian, particularly amongst the student culture in which I mix. It's much more popular and acceptable to say you're an atheist than it is to be a Bible-believing Christian. So if anyone is copying the culture around them, you could say, well, potentially it's the person who isn't a Christian rather than the person who is. So I think we need to respond to it by saying, look, these are interesting objections, but they don't disprove the existence of God, and they can be turned round on themselves. And indeed, many arguments that people have against God and against the Christian faith can be turned around in that way and say, hey, does this question work in the reverse direction? I think one of the other problems with saying that faith is just a virus of the mind, that it's just a meme, is that actually that idea has been quite discredited. There was a journal of memetics online that looked into this idea of whether memes had any kind of scientific basis. It was closed down a few years ago because they discovered that there was no real scientific basis for memes. And although it sounds a lot like genes, we really shouldn't put it in the same kind of category. It's a nice idea, but it just doesn't bear out in reality. And if we're going to say that religious beliefs are just memes, why stop at religious beliefs? Shouldn't all ideas and all truth claims be classified as memes as well? If I just believe because it's a meme, the atheist equally is believing a meme, and all kind of rational discussion about belief systems kind of go out the window. So I think the idea of memetics and Christianity being a virus is a danger not just to Christian faith, it's a danger to all rational discussion, and therefore I think atheists should be as suspicious of it as Christians as well if we want to have a reasonable discussion about what is true.